This is Disclosure Now, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest is Nathan Cizsek. Nathan is a victim of military abductions where he is forced to participate in black ops, much like Arkheim Ra. Today Arkheim and Nathan speak about what it is like trying to live a normal life while also dealing with being a victim of clandestine programs.
Hey everyone, welcome to Disclosure Now. I'm your host Arkheim Ra. I'm here with Nathan. This is kind of off the cuff, last minute, so Brian's not with us. And he's kind of at a busy point in his life, so you might be seeing him a little less for the next month or so. But he's still around, just to let people know. But yeah, welcome to the show, Nathan. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Arkheim. It's good to be here. And we have a third guest hopefully popping in any minute now, hopefully, but we'll see.
Why don't you tell people who you are? I feel like usually the guests can do that better than I can do it.
Yeah, excuse me. I got a little bit of a head cold going on. I'm a military MILAB victim. I've been used by Kruger International. From what I understand, it's pretty much them exclusively. And I've been an experiencer my whole life. I'm 50 years old. The first abduction started around 6. It actually happened at age 6, but there was visitations, and there may have been an earlier abduction than that. I'm still piecing it all together. I was involved in a online virtual temple complex, which is an online cult run by other MILABs, and that was the Joy of Satan cult, which is an Enki cult. It uses Satanism, psychological, like a facade, a camouflage to hide it. And it pretty much hides in it, out in the open on the internet. But what happened was when I was younger, back when I was like 29, 30, I had an incident where I had a severe allergic reaction to Singulair, and I'd had a bunch of psychic experiences, well before that. But I had about 3 weeks of empathic experiences where I was reading people's thoughts, or I would hear their thoughts. And it was there to this allergic reaction, but it had nothing to do with that. That was kind of like a cover or a segue of getting me, to a frame of mind where I would have something else to blame it on. So, because for a while I was sort of wondering if that was the origin of it. But what happened is that at the end of that 3 weeks, I had a telepathic communication, which was likely just, V2K, and it said to look for other people like myself, and they're on the internet. And then from there, I was subconsciously programmed to look for this cult. And it took about 2 years. And I looked everywhere, and I finally found it. And then a lot of stuff immediately started to happen. I got rushed in there. I was recruited by the person who ran the cult. Sorry, what?
It sounds kind of similar to the Temple of Set.
Well, they had some similarities to that. And they referenced the Temple of Set a bit. It was a homogenized kind of, it was a composite belief system. So it used stuff from the Temple of Set. It used things from Eastern religions, Gnostic Christianity, regular, Levian Satanism, but the whole thing, the whole foundation of it was the Anunnaki and the Sitchin books, the whole story, from the clay tablets. But it had a lot of aspects of the SSP stuff. It had the Nazism. There was that in there. There was an element of that, but it wasn't. It was sort of like you could pick. You could be into that, or you didn't have to be, but it was there. And what I found is that it had what I was called, or what I would call intuitive hits. These are things that would attract somebody who is in the programs if they're going to subconsciously program you to go into this. And so it had the Nazi element. It had a lot of things. It also had the inversion of the New Age element to it. It was just a complete inversion of it, where the GFL was the bad. Was the enemy, and the good guys were the Anunnaki. So it was a complete inversion of that. And there was a lot of people that were sucked in from the New Age who were not having a good experience, and they wanted them to go there. So that was another thing. And when I got into it, I just, there was things immediately started to happen. I was, the lady who was running it was married to Cliff Harrington of the American Nazi Party. And that was his wife. And she was actually, without authorization of the organization, without their knowledge, she was running the Joy of Satan's mailbox out of the American Nazi Party mailbox in the post office of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So as you can imagine, they had some mail theft going on. But anyway, she was heavily watched, and she was a program victim as well, and put through the entire religious or spiritual deception in order to create this cult. And then from there, they used technology, probably parasitic entities as well that they had under their control to make this a real cult experience versus other forms of, say, the occult and Satanism, where it's hit and miss and things might not happen for most people. But in this case, yeah, it was right away things began to happen. Before I even joined the cult, I had an experience where an entity came into the room and lifted up its arm and kind of rubbed it on my left side. And I was stoned, and I was having some spinal pain that night, and it completely removed it. I had no more pain in my spine, and I was completely sober, and I felt high on this energy for about 5 days. And this was their way of introducing me to them, essentially, because I had had all these psychic experiences and spiritual experiences prior to that, plus the abductions, which I didn't even know about, because they were all completely covered up with screen memories. I would sense a presence in the room, feel the fear, but I would never actually remember what happened after that. And I used to have nightmares a lot, where I would jump out of bed as a child and try to run out of the room because something was coming, and I would be frozen in my spot, and I would scream and nothing would come out. That was a repetitive nightmare. Mm-hmm. One night, it was just like The Exorcist. The bed started shaking. Something must have happened right after that, because I just remember, laying in bed for maybe 45 minutes to an hour, completely covered in sweat, and then just finally looking out and not seeing anything and feeling that whatever it was had left. So I had lots of stuff like that, but I never really saw what was coming. And then I had an abduction when I was 6, at the park at the end of my street. And the thing with that is I remember tall grays with white skin. They're about maybe 6 feet tall, spindly, but they had chalk white skin, really big eyes. They're more exaggerated looking than some of the artwork and stuff that you see, and sculptures and things like that. But all I remember is they looked like they had masks on, and I saw one that had a large almond-shaped eye, but it still looked like it had a mask. And then I just remember riding out of there as fast as I could and not telling anybody. And I got abducted later on. About within the last year, I started to remember fragments of that. And they zapped me in the back of the head. Now that part I remember. I remember getting zapped in the back of the head. And this is I'm a 6-year-old at this point. I'm just riding through the woods. I still had training wheels on my bike, and it was a little metal bike that I had, like about half the size of a regular bike. And I just kept going further and further away from the house until I started riding all summer at the park. And it was the fall of 1980. And they zapped me in the back of the head with energy, and it ran down my spine and then froze me in my spot. And if I remember, I floated off the bike and through the trees. And they actually went through the branches, not between them, but through them, and into like a white lavender colored light blue light. And I felt completely comfortable at that point. And then I lost consciousness. Next thing I know, I'm floating in the woods again through the trees, just like before. And I'm being basically sat down on the footpath with the bike. And then I'm getting on the bike and I'm leaving. And they were there. There was seven of them. And when I was floating in, I could see them to the left-hand side. And they were in a circle with their arms stretched out, like Stonehenge, like overlapping arms, and there was a light above them, like something was going to suck them up, or they were being, I'm not sure what their mode of transport was, because I don't remember anything when they first got me still yet. And so I've had that stuff happen. Let me check real quick and see if a friend of mine's.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, he is? Okay.
All right, well, that's for Dan, for what you missed. That was Nathan's introduction, and now both the viewers and myself get to get introduced to Dan, who Nathan is kind of introducing us here. So, Dan, welcome to the show. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to tell, but
feel free to go off. I don't know if you still. In fact, Nathan was just kind of going into his story. Is it good for Dan to go into his story now? Are you finished with what you want to say? I don't.
Yeah, you go ahead, Nate.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah, we're just introducing ourselves, and then after that, I guess, be free form. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, expose everything.
What,
Whatever you got to do.
the topic earlier, I saw it was something about MILABs and stuff. Or is there a specific topic you want to cover? Because you
Talk
can
about
just
what you
go
want
into
to talk
different
about, I
aspects.
guess. We just kind of threw this together, and Nathan thought that we
Sure.
should know each other. And
Yeah.
Nathan, what do you think we should talk about, really?
Well,
We were initially, I'm sorry, what do you want to say, Dan?
I was going to say one of the things at some point I'd like to talk to you about, Arkheim, and I really appreciate your contribution, is talking about the Talented and Gifted program as an entryway into a lot of these things. And you're one of the few people I've heard talk about that, and I know that resonates with my own experience as well. So, yeah.
I say we just do free form wherever we feel like we need to go with it. We had kind of an idea before, but if you're going to say that for another time, we
So is that where your story?
What do you like?
Dan is with the is your name? Yeah. By the way, what's your last name, Dan?
Armstrong.
Armstrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, this is Dan Armstrong that we're speaking with right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like a lot of these things you discover in phases, and I guess a lot of my current phase came in 2017. That's when I really started to put together the SSP stuff, because for years I'd had these experiences and there was nothing remotely talking about it. And then when I started to hear more of this, I was like, oh my God, there's people actually had that. And it really made me do an inventory about myself. And that's when I really started to put a lot of things together. I've been working on different ways of looking at things over years, but yeah, so about 2017. And what I realized then was my memory, for example, I had a memory of, Mars. I talked about it before on other interviews. And that was in like 2004, 2005, when I was living next to a military base in the middle of Seoul, South Korea. I was living there, and you could see the base from my apartment. You could like literally zoom in with your video camera and watch a person smoking a cigarette if you wanted. Anyhow, that's when I had a memory, one of my like very classic MILAB memories, SSP type of thing. So just ask questions, because I don't want to ramble on too much. I don't like to get.
I think rambling is good. Feel free to just keep going.
Well, what's unique in my experience, and I like my way of looking at this stuff isn't just the experiences. It's about how you pull data points out of the experiences. And Nate knows I'm really big on this. And I think you're very analytical too. And that's why I appreciate about how you talk about the topics you do. You're trying to get the data points. And one of the things that was interesting from it was I have a connection. Like, I think there's a big aspect to the Mormon church related to the SSP as well. And that's not discussed very much. And
let's get to that. That's
big time.
I think that's important.
It's huge.
Well,
and I've met other Mormon MILABs.
The Abraham base in general, and I'm talking about all of them, are connected to mind control programming for these ET groups. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And even so, like, a lot of what the programs are doing is emulating stuff that's way more ancient. So, yeah, that's a huge valid part of it, is the religious mind control programming. And, most of the satanic ritual abuse that I remember experiencing, ironically enough, a great deal of it occurred in churches.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's where most satanic ritual abuse occurs. So, and then also, if you know anything about me, I'm kind of showing people the connection between Satanism and these time corporations. And yeah, through the church, that's how they do so much stuff, And if they have people religious, they're just, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, but the truth is just the truth, but they're just oftentimes so programmed that they can't see past this. Yeah, they can't see past this.
The wolves hang out with the sheep. This guy's the sheep. The thing is that there's so many great people in these churches, right? Like, you meet the average Mormon person, they're actually a really nice person by and far. They good morals and standards and family and community and all these kinds of things. They're into, like, they've always been into, like, self-sustainability and canning and preserving and, you know, being self-reliant and that type of thing, all great virtues. But the hierarchy of the church is a different thing, and that there isn't priesthoods nested within the church that are protected. These are the more occult sides to the church that I think even a lot of the regular members don't understand. And they look, and they're hunting grounds, right? And so my one memory is one of the church members. I was piecing a lot of things together a few years ago, and it came back that this man with, I remember I hated it because my dad would always make us go and say hello to him when we greet him at church. And I remember he had halitosis. And I don't know if you know that, like bad breath, like horribly bad breath.
Mhm.
And it's a very classic sign of somebody being deeply possessed, right? Like,
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, my
Yeah.
grandpa who was. Wow, that explains a lot. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, it's in that series that Jude Law did as being the Pope. If you've ever watched that, it's really interesting. And one of the things he notes is the woman who, this head nun who was very abusive to all these kids in Africa. She had halitosis, and that was his way of saying, "I know what the fuck you are." Anyhow, so I don't. A lot of these memories are blocked off. It's like you can hear a conversation through another room. It's muffled, but you know it's there. So in any case, when I was dealing with my Mars memory, in the last, there was 3 sequences to it. In the last sequence, I saw Donald Rumsfeld, who was then Secretary of Defense, and the president of the Mormon Church talking together at the PX, like the canteen, where they were charging us like $20 for a fucking burger. I remember being pissed off because it was so expensive. And it sounds like totally nuts, but I think that the Mormons have always played a big role in it. So I think what's interesting is there's an overlapping and competition for you as an asset between these different jurisdictions. Originally, like, first of all, I mean, I come from, like, my grandfather was in the military. There is definitely the SRA and all the stuff about the child abuse and that type of thing, right? Molestation, you know, blah, blah, blah. But at one point, so I'm sort of co-opted in the public system. And from what I've reconstructed, the Mormons took over after a few years, and they sort of claim me as their asset. So the interesting thing is, I think, with the programs is understanding how many times you're bought and sold. You're bought and sold like a stock on the stock market,
Yeah,
like numerously
huge
through all
market.
these. Mm-hmm.
And it's just so weird, you know. I think about it sometimes. It's so weird how they can just throw your consciousness in all these different bodies. Like, one thing I found out recently is one way that they got rid of a lot of the kids at Montauk when they want to get rid of them, and I found this out through Steve Shear, is they would put the kids into dog bodies, and then they would like bring them to a shelter or whatever and get rid of them. And that's how they would get rid of kids in this weird, and I don't know why they did that, but he remembers that, and I believe him, and it's because I remember really bizarre things like that, and just the pushing the.
If it's sick, twisted, and depraved, it's probably true. I mean that. It's.
Arkheim, have you heard of anybody being put back in like Egyptian timelines repetitively, or other points like that in the past, where you're put through a miserable experience as the original self because they want to see what you do, or they want to contain you more, or they're too concerned to put you in.
One of the things I think that's interesting, and this happens, I know, like in that same Mars memory, the first sequence, I'm talking to a guy on a transport, right? And we're in like these gray fatigues or whatever. And I'm just being myself that I am here, just yammering off, talking endlessly. And the guy's like, "Stop talking about remembering," to me. And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You keep talking about remembering, you're going to get us in shit." Right? And that was his attitude about, because I was just sharing like SSP memories, like, oh, I remember being here and there and everywhere, right? Like I had this lucidity in this recall of being able to remember all these other, and the number of missions and different assignments in 20MBacks is innumerable. But so that was the one sequence. The second sequence, we were fighting like the giant spiders that were telepathic, and I felt it was disgusting. I hated the whole situation. It was total carnage. And then the third sequence was being at that PX. And one of the things I saw when I was at the PX,
what is the PX again?
Like the canteen, it's like the general store kind of thing that they have on military bases. That's what they call it. And one of the things they had was this souvenir, and it was a multi-dimensional object. Like, you know how back in the day, you probably don't remember because you're younger, but they used to have these like Kodak moment things, or like they'll take a picture of you when you go down the roller coaster or something else.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was a souvenir, and you could get this souvenir was like this multi-dimensional object. Like it was like morphing in and out of that reality and changing shape. Right? And this multi-dimensional object was like a souvenir that you could buy your memory of like your mission that you just did, right? So there's this weird thing where you're not supposed to talk about what goes on, but yet there can be something like a commodity that you can buy to help you remember your mission. So there's this contradiction.
It's a reward system is what they do.
Yeah. And it's like you can collect.
You can, if you're obedient, they will allow you to remember more to an extent.
And then the same guy from the first sequence comes up to me when I'm looking at this object, and he's like, "What are you looking at that for? I told you to stop fucking remembering things." Sorry, my language, but
I swear.
He said, "You're gonna get us in trouble." And I think this is really interesting that a lot of these people, and why are they getting in trouble? How? Because we might assume that you're getting in trouble up there, but maybe the in trouble that you get is punishments meted out in this existence, right? Like people who are compliant up there maybe do a bit better, but when you don't,
I've noticed that one thing that I think I noticed through Nathan, learned is that you get the physical ailments and attacks and energy attacks and stuff like that in the here and now when your doppelgangers that you might be aware of or might not be are being non-compliant. Right. I'm pretty sure that's a real thing. And I'm not pretty sure. I know that's a real thing, right? Like,
for sure. Well, I mean,
never do. It's a two-way thing. I'll have to elaborate it later because I know a little bit more about what's going on with me. So it isn't a compliance issue. Somewhat of it is, but not exactly. It's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, most definitely. But what I try to do is instead of speculate, just try to take what data points I can and then look at different possibilities from it. I don't say any of it's true. It's just you start to get a better picture, though, the more data points you collect between yourself and other people and analyzing this. Like my most routine thing, like I remember even being a teenager and waking up in a bloody MILAB simulation and just being pissed off, like getting off a bus and be like, oh no, not again, not tonight. All I wanted to do was just rest and relax and dream. And they got you doing some post-nuclear Holocaust survival scenario for the night. And you're like, that's your night. And just remember being annoyed by that, like being in these situations. And of course, there's absolutely no way of communicating these things. I mean, I grew up before even the internet, right? So just a lot of crap like that. Like you tend to, for me, it tends to be sometimes just remembering some of the mundane details, trying to remember how to, get from one area to another via the logistics network on the buses or trains or whatever, and all these other things. So in any case, ask me away and interject wherever and where you guys go on.
What was the moment where you kind of realized that Mars Defense Force is real and you were on Mars?
Oh, it's when I had that. I mean, I knew when I had that recalled that was in no way a fabrication, right? Like I didn't even know about
that. You had that memory,
and that was like in 2005, so
okay,
like,
so quite a long time
almost
ago.
20 years ago, right? I had no idea what it was about, but I always remembered it, and I just cataloged these different things. Like, what helps is that I've had verification through other paranormal events. Like Nate, I've told Nate, I've told some other people about my experience where I literally had an energy harvesting on the street with two of my friends walking down a public street one night from this being who was hosted by an entity or whatever. So it's not like I was closed-minded about the different possibility of things. I just didn't. It was like something goes, a paranormal event happens and you throw it in the junk drawer, you know, rather than, you don't know where to put it in your home. There's no place for this thing. So you just put it in the junk drawer. And eventually the junk drawer gets full.
Do you guys ever remember saying this? Don't forget to forget.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's familiar.
Ever saying that to people?
I remember having a good laugh before I left one time, and they said, and I remember I was joking with all my friends and that, and I was like, and I'm joking, I'm laughing, I'm like, this time I really will remember, and they're like, yeah, you say that every time.
You want to hear you want to hear something real fucked up about that, the memory thing? I'm gonna go into some details about some hardcore shit because I don't give a fuck, because you guys know who I am, Arkheim. It's bothering me that this is open. I gotta close this. Some stuff that could get me in a little trouble, but I know that the Gaia TV people and all the weird fucking Templar people that are working for them, the Knights Hospitaller people or whatever, they're all imploding right now and their shit's about to go down. So I don't feel too bad talking about it. And I guess this memory that I've had, it seems relevant to talk about now because we're talking about the don't forget to forget thing and the memory and how they play with our memory. And so I've talked about, and I don't know if you guys are familiar or not, but I've talked about how in 2023, or maybe it was 2022. No, it's 2023. I got kidnapped from the Swiss Hotel in Chicago. And I found out that later on, I figured out the guy who kidnapped me was Alexander N. Paramanov, was brought to Malbec, all this stuff. And what I did not realize until very recently, because the memory came back, was Shane the Ruiner. You guys know who that guy is?
Yeah.
He was the one who was responsible for it. So I'm just gonna get super duper real now, and this might sound fucking crazy to people, but I really don't care. Like I really don't care because it's the truth. You know what I mean? His dad is Alexander Paramanov. That's his dad, and I'm not gonna say who his mom is because I respect her. Nah, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna say it. We have the same mom. Figure it out. I already said it. I've already said it. Okay, he's my fucking brother. And that's the thing that pisses me off about him. He was at Montauk. I remember being like in the, you know, they left you in the dark rooms for hours and hours and hours and stuff like that for days and days. Well, he would bring me stuff. He'd bring me like food, stuff, blankets, stuff like that. And I remember him telling me about how he's older than me. And I remember him talking about how he was going to leave and he wasn't going to see me anymore. And I had to be strong and all this stuff like that. And he made me promise him that I would survive and I would make it through. And I did. I promised him that, you know. And then I find him in the here and now, and he's talking about how everything's a hologram and nothing we're talking about is real. And he's trying to use the Corey Good thing, which to drive a wedge in that and make everybody believe this whole none of it's real thing. And turns out he was the one.
I saw your interview with him before, yeah.
Yeah, it turns out he was the one feeding Corey Good a lot of this information and all this stuff. But I found that he was the one. The reason I bring this up, I'm getting to the point here, people. Sorry if it's long-winded. But I was doing this work on Malbec, and he was the one who got me involved in this whole situation. And I remember him standing there with a sword. And I'm on my knees with my hands tied behind my back, and I'm looking up at him. And he's like dressed like in like the like he's on Maldeck, like aristocrat. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like he looks crazy. Like doesn't look like how how it looks now, wearing like a Tool shirt and some fucking shorts or whatever. Look way different, dressed way different, and he's just like, they tell me that he's just like, I'm sorry that I gotta lie to you, brother. But one thing that I am not lying to you about is the fact that they do let me remember this all. It's like they do. I'm not lying to you about that. It's like all you had to do was follow your orders, stay in line, and do what you're told, and you can live a nice life. You can have a lot of perks, like me. Like they would let you remember, but no, you couldn't listen. You thought you could get away with it. You had to be an idealist. He's like, and you know what? I'm going to remember every moment of this. I'm going to remember the way the sky looked, the way this building behind me looked, the way the garden looked, like all the stuff he was describing. And he's like, and you're going to forget all of it. You're not going to remember any of it. And I will remember all of it. I'm like, fuck you. I'm going to remember it. He's like, no, you're not going to remember it. It's like, I promise you with every fiber in my fucking being, I will remember this moment. He's like, okay, well, do you have any last words? Or whatever, because he was about to kill me. And I said, fuck you. Those were my last words to him. And yeah, I remembered. And now I'm pretty sure that him and his buddies are trying to troll me. I'm not sure what's going on with this Preston Nichols account, but I think it might be him and Ryder Lee. Or it actually is Preston. Or it's some other sick fuck. Who knows? All I know is this guy is a guy that I went on my channel and explained that he was a molester of kids, and I was one of his victims. So to come on the channel and impersonating him, you have to be a pretty fucking sick person, whether it's actually Preston Nichols or somebody that is not. But
sure.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep on going on this rant because I think it's important. And you guys, by the way, for the rest of the show, rants are good. I think rants are good because you're in a stream of consciousness. Just roll.
Yeah, I have one right after you. It'll transition right into it.
This is all connected to Gaia TV and those people and what was going on with Corey Good, and it's all this stuff is set up. It's all set up in order to make certain things happen, and there's things they're manipulating people. And basically, Johnny Enoch, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
A little
bit. Publicly coming out, and he's being careful, but it's also about saying how he's saying, but he's also making it really obvious. He's talking about Gaia TV, and he's talking about how they all have a cult. It's all connected to the Templars, and they do all these weird rituals, and they got like Moloch worship and Baal worship and all this weird shit, and they make you do like sexual rituals in order to get power. And one of the messages that they try to insert into their viewers, into the people that are on their show is, you're doing like humanity needs to give up its sovereignty in order to be free. Or like in order to be like get a golden age, we need to give up our sovereignty. Like they're supposed to sneak that message in. There's all this weird stuff going with that, and I truly do think that Shane is connected to those people, and they're all part of all this stuff. And I don't know. It feels weird to bring them up again and say this all publicly, but I feel like I just like don't like hiding things, and I just like being like upfront about what's going on and what I see happening. And like that guy, like you can even, make up your mind for yourself. But like I know who he is. I know who his parents actually are. I know he's my brother. I know he was in the program.
But it's a good topic though in general. Nate and I have discussed this before, and we try to bring dark humor to it as much as possible, just as a coping mechanism. But I call it MILAB versus MILAB, like the old spy versus spy that Mad Comics.
Oh my god, that's so hilarious! Because I use like the Spider-Man meme for like when he talked. Yeah. That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and it's one of their preferred things and it should be talked about more in the community, is how MILABs are weaponized against each other a lot of times as well. Like this is a very big part of the controlled disclosure, and also just being able to select and discard different people and cause all the infighting. And I know people and we're not just talking socially over the internet, but people getting hijacked in MILAB things, and then they're literally taking each other out in the astral and different things like that, and then they sort of gain consciousness and be like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like do that to you. Like things are being constantly done for the community to fuck against each other as well.
Yeah, it's a big problem that we have, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right
So
now.
Nate and I were discussing it too the other day, and we are just like, you know, I think part of it, and we gotta show that we're mature and responsible spiritual beings, and part of that is just coming clean and sometimes saying, you know what, I'm sorry. You know, I really thought this about you, and you know, I'm not so sure if I believe that anymore, and I'm really sorry for like publicly slamming you or whatever. And I think a lot of reconciliation
Do you guys think that
we need to really refocus.
Apologize for telling all of us that the MILAB programs weren't real and that we never went through any of the traumatic shit that we went through? Do you think he's gonna ever apologize for that?
Probably not. There's people that aren't going to apologize for it.
Oh, and they have the
they
freedom
do,
to
they
not
gotta
do
forgive
that,
them.
right? But it's like that's their problem, though. If it's like you can even just say one possible. I like to entertain multiple possibilities towards anything. Yes, I believe in whatever, but to keep a properly open mind, it's like, okay, that's a possibility, but you have to also consider the possibility that A, you may not be right, and that B, there may be alternatives to what you think is right. If that's really important. And I know, like,
right. And that's something I'm learning right now. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Look, people are saying some pretty wild things in this community, and I don't even know what to fucking think anymore. Like, here's a good example. Like, one thing people are saying, and this is kind of how I feel, to be honest with you, is like the Trump assassination, right? Some people are saying it's staged or set up to help him win the election or whatever as a psyop, which I believe is totally possible. And
yeah,
even,
of course it's possible.
even if you like Trump,
there's enough of a megalomaniac.
that's the kind of shit that
a possibility.
politicians do. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Well, I can tell you,
especially if they have control.
I've done a lot of shooting.
Time technology and stuff,
and we
can fine tune things like a video scrubber.
Here's the other side of the coin, and this is because this is a thing in the community. The other side of the coin for that event that occurred is that there was some sort of interference to stop him from getting killed. Because if Kamala won, you know, it'd be like worse, be a worse timeline or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here. I think there was an intentional shooting. There, one side was taking him out, and I think it's very possible that somebody caused a little bit of a glitch in that finger of that person pulling the trigger to cause it to, you know, to cause them to miss.
Yeah,
no different than when they almost did nuclear strike.
When
I had a handler through V2K say something like that to me, like it was meant to miss, but it was a setup with a lone gunman that was facilitated by the FBI and Secret Service. But, you know, you got to take that with a grain of salt because they're profuse liars. Sometimes they tell you the truth because they want you to trust them a little bit, but other times they can feed you bullshit. So, you know, you can never really.
And so the weird thing that's, I guess, confusing for me is I do remember other timelines, and I actually remember a timeline where they did shoot Trump and he did get assassinated, or at least hurt enough where he couldn't. Yeah, like he was like in the hospital and he couldn't like run for president, and like I think he might have even died. Like it, but like I remember that happening in other timelines, but I don't remember it happening in Iowa. I remember it happening somewhere else. But like
that didn't happen in Iowa. It happened in PA.
Oh, Pennsylvania. Okay. Oh shit. What the fuck?
That's not too far from me.
Okay, that's where it kind. Okay. I didn't know that. I thought it happened in Iowa for some reason. I was going to say somewhere on the East Coast, and that happened in Pennsylvania. Okay, never mind. Yeah. Well, that is interesting. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I instinctually was like, this seems kind of fake when I saw it, and then I guess United News Network, I pay attention to them, and they've been talking for a while about a potential staged assassination attempt to help. That was going to be with the election and stuff like that, and then it happened. So I don't know what to believe, but I do believe that there's an aspect of timeline protection stuff going on. Like I'm like the most vocally, like I'm not that much of a fan of Trump, like most people are in this community, or a lot of people. But I do remember the fact that there was efforts made in the programs and time travel stuff to get Hillary out of the way and have him be there instead, because of how bad the timeline would be with Hillary. That is
yeah,
that really happened. And
I
am,
need Kamala's next year, man.
but that doesn't mean that I worship Trump though either. Like
No.
the worship programming with him is what weirds me out. Like I think that presidents are public servants, and that we should treat them as such. And when we treat them like rock stars, it makes it hard for us to hold them accountable. And that's kind of where I'm at with the whole just Trump thing and presidents and generals. We just need to remember what they're there for. They're supposed to be public servants. We're supposed to respect them and revere them, especially if they do a good job. But also, if we like worship when we can't hold them accountable. So that's basically my main gripe. And there's just that's just basically.
But no, you don't understand though. The whole point is to make them worship. Politics is a religion. It is the secular religion of our day. What did people do in the past? They wanted to do things. The priest would say, "Do this, and God will bless you." Well, nowadays you just have people they need to fix problems. They say, "Well, the government should do this. The government should do that." The government becomes this agency that's supposed to fix all of these social problems that it obviously engineers to begin with. It's only severe naivety to think that it's not actually engineering all these problems or a good deal of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. I think like a lot of it's set up, and what people.
Well, it's the main control structure of the ancient extraterrestrial control governments are nothing new.
Yeah, and I just kind of throw that out the window with Trump. It's like to me, I'm sorry, guys, we can agree to disagree with that. Seriously, as soon as I saw it, I was like, "What? This look?" He's like, I'm like, what? Like, I don't know, man. It looks.
I don't know if you remember Arkheim, but back when I think before he was elected, he was up on the podium and a dove. I don't know if the dove was white, but I know it was a dove landed on the podium or right next to him, and then the opponent always had flies or a locust. And I just looked at that and I thought, and then when I saw the public's response to the dove, I thought, okay, this almost feels like a biblical event, and it feels like someone's trying to make it that way.
Yeah, and I'll just be honest with you. I have to be honest with myself and everybody on the show. Like, I've had experiences with Trump directly. I've actually met him in the programs.
Yeah, there's other people.
I know Hillary pretty well, so.
Yeah. What I remember is, so the whole thing about them clearing out bases is real. And I just remember there was something where we went in and we cleared out a base, and this huge thing happened, and we got medals, and Trump was there, and this was an Alpha Team thing. I've talked very briefly on it. I'm gonna do a whole show on Alpha Team in the near future, but basically, he was just like, I'm gonna do my Trump impersonation, guys. He's like, these men and women they're very brave. He's like, they've saved many lives today. And he's like, they've saved many lives today, and they're heroes, and nobody knows about it. Nobody knows what they did. Like, nobody knows that they don't need any credit. Can you believe that? People, can you believe that? They don't even ask for credit. That's a real hero.
Oh, honestly, that is gold.
Yeah.
That is gold.
But he's just like, saying like, yeah, they don't even ask for credit. They don't even need credit. Those are real heroes. And it was real brief because I remember I was like in part of the facility that we took out, and like it was at the top level. And I remember like it was secured, but he was still freaked out and he didn't want to be in there that long. So he was in there just long enough to say like, good job, guys. Okay, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like that's what I remember about it. But yeah, so.
Oh no, they do. So that's an interesting part too to bring up, though. That like me talking about Rumsfeld or whatever. There, like, obviously, there's definitely, and I hate using the word elites. It's unless you're being technical about it, but yeah, they're going up and down all the time. Now, whether or not they're fully conscious of all that, or they're not getting mind.
Yeah, that's what I wonder about it. Like, does he remember talking to us?
What people assume, right?
I would probably suspect he doesn't.
Yeah.
I think we're on a Truman Show. And a lot of people just don't know it.
Yeah.
But they got to keep us in the chamber.
Another thing I remember too, while we're here talking about, oh, by the way, hey, it's Jessica Jones is here. It's good to see you, Jessica. But yeah, one of the other memories that I got recently that I guess I'll talk about on here, and I don't mean to take the floor the whole time. I'll shut the fuck up after this, guys. But I have a memory of JFK, of working with John F. Kennedy. and my job was, drum roll, I was supposed to protect them from getting assassinated. Obviously, I fucked up there. I failed at my job, but
Maybe you did exactly what you were supposed to do.
or I sabotaged it. Yeah, because I remember Marilyn Monroe and how much he loved her, and I know she was a Montauk asset, and I think that we used that against him. He loved that woman, man. But yeah, I remember that we would read the Marvel and the DC comics. This is hilarious, man. He would invite me to in his office, and we would read the comics, and he'd have his box full of cigars and the brandy, and like a bottle of brandy in the silver bucket full of ice and cups, like glasses, and we would drink brandy on ice, fine brandy on ice, and we would smoke cigars and
Good
read.
taste. I love brandy.
What's that?
I love brandy. What good taste.
Yeah, and we would read these comics and we'd laugh because we knew this character was based on so and so and da da da. And they're like cartoons, so a lot of times it's caricatures. You know what I mean? And there's stuff in there that goes over the public's head that we thought was like, and obviously it's all propaganda. So a lot of it we kind of like decided and like put in there. And yeah, he just was really entertained by that. And I also remember this was my alter, Ryan Sterling. And I was actually with my partner, Catherine, who I don't know if she hears us talking about this right now, but yeah, we had a child named Molly, and she can come in here if you want. You keep on ending up on the show. You want to talk? Oh, you just got out of the show?
Yeah, I just got out of the show.
Okay, never mind.
You can talk about it if you want. I don't mind.
Okay. Well, basically, we had a daughter named Molly, and I just remember like we were briefing with JFK, talking with them about something, and then something occurred, and we had to go do something, and we just had our daughter with us, and we were literally like, I hate to ask you, sir, but can you watch our daughter? Like, we can't just go to a babysitter. Like, we're not supposed to exist. We're ghosts or whatever, you know? So, like, we couldn't just get a babysitter. We're like, can you watch her? And he was like, sure, I can do that. So we were gone for however long we were. I think it was like 6.5 hours or something like that. And then we got back, and she was sitting on the floor with her crayons and her books and stuff like that. And we were like, hey, sorry to trouble you with that. You're the president of the United States. You know, it's like we shouldn't even ask you. He's like, oh, it's fine. He's like, she was the most present little girl I've ever had the pleasure of watching. She's like, she just colored in her crayon book the whole time. And then I worked on being I worked on my stuff here. You know what I mean? And he's just like, it's fine anytime. And so I remember that. And it's just like, yeah, some wild memories when it comes to presidents. And it's just like, yeah, we did every single joint air chief of the Air Force or whatever. Like Montauk talked to them. Like all these different people throughout history. Like we talked to them. Like it's crazy. And like these programs, everybody kind of has this idea like, oh, Montauk, time travel, and then this other stuff is not time travel. And it's like, no, guys, it's all fucking time travel. all this time travel. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these colonies all use time travel as a part of what they do, and none of them would exist and operate the way that they do if it weren't for time travel and clones. They wouldn't even be able to set up shop and exist the way that they do if it weren't for time travel and clones. And us three would not be sitting here talking right now if it weren't for that, right? Like, that's why we're here talking right now.
Yeah, I mean, look at it alone. Like, if you just look at it from the...
Hold a second. I just want to add something real quick, Dan. The reason for this Arkheim, so that everybody understands, is for timeline supremacy. They want to dominate every timeline. So that's the purpose of this. They want to control everything. Because if they can control every timeline, they can stop anything from unraveling and getting out of hand, so they can maintain control and continue the slaves, the whole human, well, I would say human slavery. It's actually just a soul slavery system, plus you have a prison planet. In order to keep that going, you have to make sure you tie up your loose ends, and those loose ends are the timeline. So they want supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
It's not
That's
enough
to conquer the universe. You have to
conquer every version of it.
Yeah, you got to beat him at every juncture. It's not just, it isn't just defeating him on one time.
The universe is not enough.
Yeah, we got to explore every possibility in I don't know, a multi-dimensional flow chart of timelines. Like every variable has a new timeline. So, we're fighting on multiple timelines depending on how many grains of sand are on the planet. Each one is a
Well, I
grain of
know.
sand off.
I've been to timelines where it's like the end of the never-ending story when everything's just sort of destroyed. There's like nothing left, and you're salvaging, literally going on the salvage operation, trying to retrieve what's not completely destroyed.
Shit.
This is by far not one of the worst ones.
It's
Well, you ready for a juicy story?
yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to start this, and then I'll get into some stuff with an altar, which kind of I believe it's connected to it. So,
Give me
and
one
this
second.
brings up somebody. So there's some controversy here. Couple, I'd say probably 5 months ago, maybe. There was a woman named Heather, and she was one of the administrators with myself and Rob's group, the Typical Skeptic podcast Telegram group. Excuse me. And anyway, Heather had a lot of trauma in her life, and she was a victim. What she said was Jeffrey Epstein's circle of people, and she was recruited as a child model. So she had a lot of problems. And she, later in life, she just kind of fell apart, became estranged from her family and stuff, and became homeless, started living out of a car and so forth. And anyway, she became an administrator in a group. Now, Kimberly McGeorge, who's been on Rob's show multiple times, probably 5 times at that point, she does stuff where she does readings, and she does a lot of hit piece videos on people in the community. I wasn't aware of any of this, so I'm just an administrator there, and I knew of her because I'd seen 1 or 2 of her shows with Rob, and I figured, she talks about the simulation. So I always wanted to do a podcast with her because she was one of the ones that, had that information and her own way of looking at it. So, but it never happened. But when she popped up into the group, Heather immediately went after her and started cyber stalking her. Well, I would say cyber stalking, but leaving negative comments under her YouTube videos and just saying, hey, the gig's up. I know this is BS. You're working with frequencies, you're working with the feds, you're doing this or that. And, so she has a channel called The Secret of Everything. So anyway, I confronted Heather in the group, and I had to do the right thing because now I've got an administrator that's attacking one of the guests. And, I had to do the right thing. So I called her out on it. And then she got mad and said, I'm leaving the group. And when she did, she deleted like 40, 50 people out of the group just to get even, just to say F you for siding with her. So we fixed that over a period of a few weeks. But in the meantime, I befriended her, and we were going to do a podcast. But, we talked about it. But before that, I said, let's do a Zoom chat. It was supposed to be me and a friend and her. So the Zoom chat was going to be on a Sunday. This is like the week after this whole thing. I've talked to her on the phone probably twice now for an hour or two. And all is good. So Sunday comes around, and she goes to a birthday party for her grandson. She's at the birthday party for about 2 hours, and she notices that for 2 hours, there's been 2 FBI agents, or I think it was 2, sitting out in the car. And she had told me that she, gets handled by the FBI. Like it isn't like with so much with the V2K. It's just some people get hands-on agents. It's just the way it is. It isn't that. And I've said this before publicly. And I was thinking of her when I said it. If people have hands-on agents, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, that they're out to get everybody. It just means that's the way they've been profiled. That's how they find they're most receptive to the handling. It's more intimidation, I guess, depending on what it is. Depends on the person. So, I was already like taking her side. I understood what was going on, and I didn't like the fact that Heather was doing this to her. And I thought we just better off getting along. So Sunday comes, and this happens. Now the feds, they're out front, so she goes out to see what they want. And they put her in a car, and they put her in an altered state. She said it was like a partial OBE. They put a laptop in her lap, and they started reading her, I guess, the Riot Act, whatever, which is just giving her shit about having anything to do with me. And Evie Lorgan was brought up, the researcher. She's also MILAB too. They mentioned Evie Lorgan, and they mentioned my friend. But the problem is they put all the emphasis on me. And they told her, and I don't know what they told her, but from what she said publicly, they showed her my military record. They showed her what my real name was, and said
This is
something.
what she's claiming, right, McGeorge?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know it's real because I mean I sensed it. She sent me a picture of one of the agents. Wasn't the same incident, but it was another incident of just some gang stalking. We talked on the phone, so I understood what was going on with her. It wasn't a problem, and it wasn't a problem initially because what she said to me is, she says, they told me that you would discredit my work and not to talk to you, and you're in the IBIS program. They mentioned Evie and my other friend, and it was just, but it was all on me. Don't talk to him. So I don't know what they said after that, but she said a lot of the stuff was like programming. It was like going in her and she couldn't remember everything at the moment that she was recounting it to me. So she got out of the car and then contacted me that same day and told me what happened after she got back home. And she said, I'm worried because this is the first time they've involved my family. And I said, hey, totally understand, so we talked about it, thought everything was cool. And she says, they told me I can't have you on my podcast, but I got a friend I'm filling in for about a month, and there's a couple slots open. Why don't you come over there? Because they didn't tell me that I could put you on another podcast. So she had this friend who she was filling in for. It was a new age kind of website. I looked on it, and it was all the people you see in the more popular conferences of the new age, like you see, fairly repetitive faces, and they were all, some of them had shows there and others were just there, as a guest and so forth. She wanted me to go on there and talk about MILAB stuff and kind of just expose these people that never heard of it or had very little exposure to it, to being a TI and what that's like and the whole thing. So it was more of like she was going to use me to kind of stir up a little shit in a community that needed a wake up call. And I thought, hey, that's not a bad idea. But I was concerned about the FBI. So everything was cool. And then she dropped off the face of the earth. And I figured they got to her again. They said something to her and told her to stay away. So I sent her a puppy picture because I had sent her one before. And I just said, hey, this, and I said, it's okay. Everything's cool. When you can talk, we'll talk, and that was it. So I thought everything was cool. Then a while later, Christy Campbell posted a video from Kimberly because they had done some podcasts together and maybe a reading or two, I think. And so she posted this thing about, it was about handlers and community gatekeepers, and it was like part 3, and it was featuring Evie Lorgan. It said something about Laura Eisenhower.
Oh my God, I couldn't believe that when you said Evie to me before that was proposed.
Yeah, so she does.
How the hell is Evie Lorgan a gatekeeper? Is beyond
well,
so weird.
A gatekeeper or a handler, I don't know which, but it was. Yeah. She's in there lumped with kind of like a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it, it wasn't accurate. I know Evie, none of the, and the whole thing, and a lot of it was based in opinion. Why did she focus on the older research? Because that's relevant, and it talks about what we're dealing with now very, very well. It's not like the new shit. So, but anyway, she does this hit piece and then brings up me and calls me 100% controlled asset. She says I'm using a different name than what she's seen my military file, and she says I admitted to it. And then she's acting like I'm some kind of a terrible person. And and this comes up to something that you've talked about, Arkheim. I don't know what she saw in my military file, but I've got at least one particular altar that's been coming through, because I haven't had any others come through on their own, just one. Very high up in the command structure, for Kruger. And I think this is what she's referring to, but I don't know for sure because she's not relaying this message to me. So, whatever our alters are doing in these programs, really, we shouldn't be judged for it because they're completely mind controlled. They're mind wiped. They limit their emotions to a sociopath and then program them to do things.
Taboo makes you not have any emotions and not have any empathy. It makes you stronger. It makes you more intelligent, but it also makes you not have any empathy and not about like hurting other people and stuff like that. It makes you very sociopathic. So yeah, there's like a lot of.
I remember the process of an altar creation. It was weird. Like they elicit a very strong response in you that literally gets your soul to fragment itself, like your personality split.
And then they offer you an out.
Agreeing, disagreeing, and everything simultaneously three aspects of myself. And it was really weird, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And then they can take that one, right? The one that's the most sociopathic, and it's like, okay, we'll program that one to do whatever. And then
Right.
you can still have your other aspects. And yeah, it's so beyond the level of complexity is too hard for most people with their simple lives to understand. And it's just, yeah. And the most important
question,
thing is
you
that it
guys.
is ancient.
Can you remote view your remember codes or when they made your own altars? Yeah,
No,
mine
I
would
haven't.
be very dangerous to do that, and they have ways to detect it, and they will try to stop you. It's not that it's impossible, but it's extremely dangerous, and I would highly recommend doing a lot more targets than that, and learning a lot about what you and how to shield yourself and stuff like that, and how to protect yourself before you even try something like that.
And even if you do, you have to ask yourself, like, what's the purpose of learning that, right? Is that like an ego thing? Because it would be pretty horrific.
It would not be a fun thing to remote view.
Probably like 90% of how they justify the memory wiping is saying that it would be too much for us. So they act like it's almost a moral thing that's going on. But the other thing is to know, and I like using certain terms. I think we have to get a lot more formal with some of the terms that we use sometimes to describe these things. I don't know if you ever read the Mars Records by Stephanie Ralph and her husband, but it's an excellent account. It's one of the most authoritative books. It's hard for some people because they come at it from a Christian perspective. That's what helped them in the end beat a lot of the programming and abduction. But they did it all through like muscle testing in this way back in the day, and this is before any of this stuff's popular. And one of the things that we talked about is
they're using an e-meter, weren't they?
Pardon?
Somebody was saying that they were using an e-meter. One of their critics.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was, yes, they're using the same thing the Scientologists say, and they got in trouble for using that because they said, I can't remember what they actually called, who's the guy, Hubbard. They called it, the military and that later aliens would euphemistically like deride it as the Hubbard machine. But yeah, they were using that. But the interesting thing was they took a very scientific approach for something that sounds so out there and woo. And one of the things she really talked about, I think is a great concept, is called Wernicke commands. And Wernicke commands are what we would call post-hypnotic suggestion, right? So you have to understand that when you come across a situation, it's like augmented reality. If you come across a situation where you fulfill these different criteria, then a Wernicke command pops up, right? So somebody brings up, like say for most of us when we're still heavily under the mind control, somebody brings up ETs, people get hostile. That would be an example of a Wernicke command, right? It'll pre-program your response to different elicited stimulus. So the whole thing about like a remember code, that can easily be set up with Wernicke command security protocols for a number of
codes here for myself.
Should you try to do that?
I have some. I have a Russian altar that murders people through a portal. He goes and he kills people for Putin. The fog is rolling in. I guess it would be in Russian. Bring the rain and the sunshine. These are two things that he would get a phone call and then they would activate the programming. So that was from a session with Lydia James.
Can you say those phrases again?
It's the fog is rolling in, which is a separate one, and bring the rain and sunshine. But,
yeah, I know when I've gone through my own dosing, a lot of times when I find out about an abduction that's occurred, a lot of times it tells me like I literally, it's ET phone Dan, like it's an ET and CIA are like synonymous with my higher self when they're describing this phenomena. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt with that, Nate, but it's sort of this interesting idea, and I'm losing it strangely as I'm trying to say. So you guys go ahead.
All right. Well, anyway, somebody says here, I really like Kim and her information interviews. Well, I do too. But lately, her information has seemingly become mean girl opinions, ideas about people and their information. Nathan confirmed my feeling. Yeah, no, that's what's going on there. And but there's a bit more to this now. This is what I was going to talk about. This is just something that's been happening to me within the last, I don't know, maybe month and a half or so. I started getting communication with this alter, and at first it was just a voice, and it felt different, which is when I asked you, Arkheim, the last time we did a podcast together on Rob's show. I asked you about how it felt. It does feel different. It's not like the empty V2K stuff. But, it has more of an internal feel to it. And so anyway, what happened was the last podcast I did on Rob's show was a couple of days ago. And it happened to be a woman who was, connected to Kimberly. Somebody that I don't know if she's been on her show or whatever, but they know each other. And Kimberly didn't like the fact that I was put on there with her and mentioned something in the comments. So it's like this campaign against me. And
clear, I'm letting people talk about this stuff on my show, but I actually don't even. Who's Kimberly? Kimberly who?
Kimberly McGeorge. She has the podcast called The Secret of Everything. She's been on Rob's show a few, like 5 or 6 times.
I don't actually know who she is, so just making that clear. I don't have any horses in this race or anything, but yeah, I know that I respect Nathan, and I believe what he's saying here. So,
well, everything
it's important. We're just describing a phenomenon, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is with her, though, is what, I just want to make a point. I want to go on this alter stuff, is that she's in the program, so she knows this, and she knows that, you shouldn't judge somebody for what their alters did if you find out, or if they've done something to you. And I mean, unless there's something like in the case with you, Arkheim, where there's something going on currently, and it's connected to that, that's a different situation. But if you just, FBI shows you a file and says, hey, this guy's bad news, here's what he does, and this is what he does for Kruger. It's like, you're going to hold that against me. So, that's the thing. It's like,
but you see, the attribute they're making wrong is that that's the conscious you who's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, your unconscious alter is doing those things.
Exactly. I'm not control over it.
But what they're tying together this assumption, right?
That it's
of like
that I'm the same way.
That you're actually the same way, and you're secretly hiding this fact.
Exactly.
Well, blah blah blah. Like this is the manipulation that's done, right?
Yeah, this is happening to a lot of people right now. It isn't just with Kimberly, but I mean, there's people that are
and I can talk about it. I've had falling outs with key members of the community when I literally remember having a MILAB abduction before from the military.
Here's another thing. I don't believe in the NPC thing either. I think that everybody has certain levels of awareness, and we all evolve. And I think that NPC is non-player character to me is sort of like I'm not trying to sound like a dick because I don't even know who this person is, but to me it seems like a narcissistic way to act like a lot of people don't matter. And that's a big problem with the world, is we need to remember that we all don't fucking matter at all equally, but also we all matter so much equally. You know what I mean? Like, it's a contradiction, but it's true. Like,
like when you see somebody, they're referring to as an NPC. Like, because if you start looking at everybody through that framework, you're going to look at people that maybe it could be a homeless person, could just be anyone, and you're going to look at them and think they're less than human, and that causes it starts to make you paranoid that these beings are out there and they're empty vessels. It makes you disassociate from other people. You may withdraw. There's a lot of psychological negatives there when you employ that in your belief system and you overdo it. Now, if you've had that experience, and some people have, you have to know where the experience ends and reality begins. You can't just look around and think everybody's an NPC. Or whatever because they have different terms for it, but they're saying it's an AI generated person that has nothing in them, that's there, that appears physical, but as soon as you turn away, they're gone. Somebody else is looking at them now, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if that's real or not. Let's say whether that is real or not.
It's a generated hoax that's causing it, and then that's put into our psyche. They want us to believe that because it causes another disassociation, another It's another device
It
attack.
makes you disassociate from other human beings around you, and it makes them not matter. And it makes them become like literally like video game characters.
But
And they're
at the
not.
same time, though, it's perfectly fine. Always, you should question your reality that you're in constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had an experience where it's very jarring, where I really realized most of the people around me at that moment were like, they were like these just movie extras, maybe as a way of putting it, and it was really weird. And I saw very few.
Effect. That doesn't mean that they're not people. It just means that they're programmed.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
societal program will create an NPC.
Yeah, in some ways, but it's, I think at the same time, like, yeah, question it, but it's about how far you let it take you, right? It's like you said, the implication. Do you start looking at it this way? Do you start treating it like you're better than those people? Do you just start, driving your car through people because these people are just NPCs anyway? Like, it's about how you act on the information and how you internalize the information that matters.
Here's one I with it too. Yeah, I agree with your point. I'm kind of curious about this comment here, though. I'll bring it back up on the screen.
Sure.
She said that same woman did a hit piece on Lily. Lily Nova. She's the only Lily, right? Like Lily Nova.
Like, she's done hit pieces on a lot of people.
Yeah. What? Here's the thing with that is, okay, I don't know what it is with people who do hit pieces on people, because it's like, I know it's like I literally just did something earlier where I talked about somebody who had on my show, and I was just like, hey, they're kind of having a mental breakdown right now, but I'm worried about them more than anything. But I told people to watch out. That's about the closest thing I've ever had to calling somebody out on a show, and I wasn't even like, this person sucks. I was like, no, they're real. They're just going through trauma right now. Like, their dad died around this time. Like, it's a really traumatic time for them every year. But like, yeah, they're freaking out right now. Like, watch out, people. Like, I don't know. Like, basically, that's the closest I've ever. And I just think it's more about the person. It's just like, we shouldn't be focusing on our information and what's real than what doing hit pieces on other people. And it's not that it doesn't need to happen.
Like, no, it's just it's bad data, it's bad analysis, right? Like, there's bigger things to go.
I've only done it
I've experienced that side of the programming before. It's not fun because it's meant to ultimately socially isolate you.
Yeah, and if you go into people's videos and talk about these NPCs, if you look in the comment section, you'll see a lot of people that are associating just strangers as NPCs. Like, they're seeing them everywhere. I saw that right away as a red flag when I first was introduced to that concept, because I looked at how many people were reacting in such a way that I could see they were paranoid now. Everybody's an NPC. And I've heard people say, there's 90% of the population isn't real.
I think with this comic Asra, she says, or they say, I don't know what their gender is. We are programmed to unknowingly trigger each other and the alters. It's not an individual agenda necessarily, but a larger manipulation being done by those who fractured us. Mm-hmm. And that's what I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on, is they program people. It's the whole thing I've talked about. Willem Dafoe telling me his clone in one of the underground facilities, telling me the town is built up to it was like built up to keep us down. He's like, it's built up to keep you down. Da 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 da. And like the Alta Ryan Sterling explained, like, yeah, people are supposed to react with you and you to a certain way, and you react to them a certain way, and it's all built up to, like, yeah, literally keep you down, literally keep you in a mind control system. So a lot of like these towns that we live in are literal programs that are set up to keep us in the mind control program they have set up with us, and that's why they feel so weird and astroturfed and manufactured. It's not because they're NPCs, it's like they don't exist and they're not real people or whatever. It's because they're programmed. So I really, really enjoyed this comment, and I really appreciate it, Astra. Also, I know that you know me, and there's a reason why Ra is in your name, and I would really appreciate it if you would get connected with me, because I know that we know each other. I can feel your energy even through you're just an A on a screen in Azra, but I still can know that I know you, and I would really appreciate it if you could reach out and we could talk sometime. But yeah, anyway, that was a really great comment. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, an hour and 15 minutes on Lily. Look, I'll be honest with you. There's a few things that I disagree with Lily on, like the archangels and stuff like that. And then she went on Journey to Truth today, and she said stuff about how Elon Musk is gonna save the world or whatever. And I'm like, what the hell? But I'm not gonna. Instead of like going on my show and being like, Lily's telling him lies and blah blah blah, I'm just gonna talk to her about it like a normal human being. I messaged her. I was like, hey, we should talk soon. that's literally what I did. I'm gonna ask her like
level of understanding, and we have to be understanding of that. I came in this community completely deluded, completely under their mind control, Galactic Federation crap, this and that, and councils and all kinds of garbage. When I was being abused, and we have to give each other space. We got to give each other time and understanding. And we got to understand that people aren't always their self. I mean, it's very easy to have to alter out, have a problem with each other, and have an enormous amount of anger that's completely disproportionate to what happened. And you got to know yourself, and when you see that, and you really have to go through it first. I can't just tell people, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and then they go through it, and then they're like, oh, Nathan said it was going to go like this, I'm good. No, you're going to have to go through it at least once or more, a couple of times, maybe a long time, before you realize that you're being manipulated, and that what this person supposedly has done, there's no reason to get that upset about it. There's no reason to hold that anger and grudge for 2 or 3 months.
Like if Lily thinks that's not true and she's wrong about it, like the last thing I'm going to do is do a hit piece about it. I'm just going to present my information and she can present hers. But I won't. But as somebody who cares about the truth, I want to have an actual face-to-face conversation with her privately, not publicly, to like figure it out, like what's really going on. So like, yeah, and that's something that people could do a lot more when they disagree with each other.
That's the religiosity of it, though, too, right? Like, whether people want to believe it or not, this is exactly religious behavior. I have the correct denomination of Christ. They're all fighting. That's why there's like 30,000 denominations of Christianity.
And also the alternate realities and
they want to turn it into
confusing. Because for me, this is what I remember about Elon Musk. Okay, I'll tell you. I remember that his family's from Venus, that they're involved in cloning, and they're involved in like weird genetic experimentation and basically selling clones to be used for sex slavery, pets, all sorts of weird shit. And that's what his family is involved in. And that's what he's involved in. And I remember waking up at one of his clone factories over and over again, and him literally fucking being there. And I remember all sorts of horrendous things about him. I remember being at one of the hunting parties in Europe, and there being a little boy stuffed like a pig on a table, and Elon was feeding off the kid. And so, yeah, those are my memories and my experiences with Elon Musk. And also, let's look at the Neuralink and the fact that it's like killing monkeys, and the fact that Neuralink literally leads to us connecting to a Unimatrix AI in the future, and the song The Sound of Silence being written about how fucking weird our existence becomes because an AI controls everything, because we're hooked up through Elon Musk's wonderful AI.
Don't worry about our team. He's going to be the Trump administration efficiency expert, okay? We're okay. Don't worry about it. The guy who's the biggest corporate welfare recipient in history is going to be in charge of government.
Well, where the waste is. Where the waste is going. That's why he's so good at it.
Yeah, corporate welfare. And people
the biggest corporate welfare recipient. Think of it. He's the richest person in the world, and his entire fortune was built off primarily government subsidies for Tesla.
He's basically built his entire career off of other people's backs, and he's just a shitty individual.
And he talks about it, makes him very intelligent. People say that. It's just like he's thinking as he's talking. It's like, no, he's got a disability, but that's not. It isn't the issue. I just want to know is that you got these other versions of him out there, so it's kind of like what we were talking about. What's the real?
The alters. So that's what I was gonna get to. Are there alternate versions?
What's the real Elon like? I don't know.
Because he's a billionaire, okay, and he's not the best person in the world, in my opinion. But is that eating dead boys off the table evil, or is that? But here's what I think, guys. This is what I think. This is the reality.
I think planting chips in people's heads is pretty evil.
I remember he's misguided. I think the Terminator's coming. So.
And like, just like, why would he do these things and want to do all this stuff, and with the billions of dollars that he has, like, okay, like,
Well, why is he allowed to do it? Because
when you have that much
there's your
money,
question.
when you have that much money, it causes like mental illnesses in people. They can't get off on anything they do anymore. No drug gets them off. No sex gets them off. No, you know what I mean? So they have to do weird, fucked up shit to feel anything. And look at his family. Like, all of his family members, his kids and his wives, they all leave him. He ends up alone. So that's like, I'm sorry, but like, yeah, we have a lot of problems with our community, guys. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, I tuned into Dirty Truth today. I love those guys so much. I respect the fuck out of them. I tuned into that show and I watched it for 10 minutes and I had to turn it off because there's just so much disinformation and bullshit on the show. And I say that with love. Like, I love those guys and I love Lily, but like, I turn on the show and they're like, Elon Musk is going to bring us to Mars. Like, we're already on Mars. Don't you guys? You've done like several shows on this, guys. Like, yeah, and he's going to. And I got all these. My question to Lily, my first question that I'm going to ask her, and I hate to do this in public and talk about it before I talk to her because I literally said because I did not want to do this. But my first question I'm going to ask her is: were you wearing a Faraday hat? Because it sounds to me like you're just listening to V2K. Like, Elon Musk is going to save humanity. That does not sound like something like an advanced fucking ET would be telling you. That sounds like something the CIA would be telling you. Like, for real, dude. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I love her so much. Her bright, bubbly soul is such a good presence in our community, and it's needed. But what the fuck? Elon Musk is going to save humanity? That was really disheartening for me to hear as somebody who's seen that guy be a fucking monster in the programs. Like, I don't know. And then again,
critical
like you guys are saying, hold up, let me finish my thought. I've been a monster in the programs. I've done fucked up things in the programs. And so I'm going to finish my thought with this. Elon came from a very fucked up family, an Illuminati family, where you kind of have to eat from the little boy on the table. You kind of have to, and there is a small chance that he does want to defect from that. But the proof is in the pudding, man. Like, look at how he acts. Look at what he does. Like, the only cool thing that he did was he opened up Twitter, which is a free speech platform, which great, that's awesome. But he basically just uses it as a playground to make it to like trump up his own ego.
It's not even that. They work hand in hand with the Intel community. I've been banned on there since it was Twitter. When it switched to X, I tried to contact tech support twice to say somebody's disabled my account. I can look at people's posts, but I can't post anything. I get an error message. As soon as I did that, they locked me out of everything, including being able to reset my password, because I had to reset my password to get a hold of tech support. So once I did it the second time, that was it. They're still doing this.
That's what happened to me. Or excuse me, on Facebook, Twitter. The zombies followed me, and I'm like a nobody, and I had no clue why. And now I know why. It's because I wrote some of their songs, and they knew who I am.
Mm.
So I had that was the weird thing that happened to me on Twitter is the zombies, like the guys who wrote, God, I'm having a brain fart. The zombies, man. They wrote.
I thought you were talking about reels, like.
No, the band from the 70s, man. What's their big song? I'm sorry, I gotta look it up now because it's gonna drive me crazy if I don't. Hold on, 1 second. Why is my keyboard not working? Come on, not this shit again.
Yeah, but it's very important to understand that about the intelligence agencies.
The NSA's looking it up right now.
Time of the season. I love you. She's not there as her big one. Is their big one. Anyway, yeah. I'm sorry. I just.
Well, if you look at it like In-Q-Tel, all of this, right? Like, In-Q-Tel. It's the financing arm of the CIA. So they invest in technologies and, it's about using seed money. But largely, it just comes down to there's an apparatus and a system for filtering out all the off-world tech and everything has to be brought into this world, but they have to do it slowly. So this is all released through the intelligence agencies, military agencies, right? And then they have to come up with these companies to spit it out.
Yeah, just like crypto and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, come on.
Offsell Global Technologies that's doing the V2K stuff. That's an interesting thing. A company out of India is doing some of the V2K for the military industrial complex. And how ironic is that? So you got somebody calling you, I've been calling you down to see if you want to, chimney sweep or whatever. And then, and then the the same people, not necessarily the same people, but
Help
they're
us
scamming.
stretch your black budget dollars.
Right. It's like not only are they going to call you on the phone, but they're going to talk to you in your head too. And it's all from India, you know. But anyway, it's an international tech company. It's one of many that does it for Kruger, and they act as a proxy. So you know,
And I think that's important to look at too.
Companies. What's that?
Well, that's the other thing, and that's what I was getting into earlier too. That there's so many different agencies. Like when I've gone through, and it's not that I have all these memories of these different things, but I've been sort of secretly working with my higher self on some of this. And you know, for me, I've traveled through all these countries, and many times I was being used as an asset in that country's military structure or intelligence agency structure while I lived there.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Right? So it's not the idea that these nations are really fighting against each other the way they present to the public. Yeah. The thing is, the secret space program, all this intelligence operations and everything, they're completely international and it's completely above and supranational, right?
It's separate, and they overlap and conflict with each other.
One thing that I've been getting memories of back is Joint Navy Space Fleet, which is the UN's Time Corporation space fleet that's like colonizing planets and stuff. And they work with Solar Warden, but like, yeah, they work with like the German space military, which is not the off-world colonies and empires. It's the Earth Germans. And then like, yeah, pretty much all the people that are part of the UN have like a stock in this joint Navy space fleet. And yeah, they were part of colonizing Centurion 5 and like sure all sorts of other stuff. But yeah, that's one of the I haven't heard anyone else talk about that yet. I'm betting I can almost guarantee that there's been other people who have talked about it, but I haven't found anyone yet.
I just want to mention something too with this altar that I got, and this would be interesting for people who are here, to listen and to learn how how the mind wipes work and how all this whole thing sort of interacts and happens. But anyway, I have this altar. He said he's very high up to the point where where he's not going to have consequences, by speaking to me. And essentially what he said is just recently, I've only had like 4 communications with him. And this was the 4th one. This was yesterday. And I had a little bit of one earlier today, but it was just a mention of something. He explained to me that he broke through the mind control to the point where he could remember me or he was able to connect with me. And I asked him, I said, what do they do to you? Now, in that question, it had a larger context to it. So what I meant is what do they do to him mentally? How do they alter his consciousness? And he said, he didn't explain how they did it, but what he said is that I'm a sociopath with a heart and you're the heart. And he says, I've used you to reconnect with my emotions. And this is something they're concerned with because there's an insubordination risk when you have someone, especially someone high up in a position that starts to remember and then starts to get their emotional control back. Their emotional span starts to broaden. Then you have a conscience. So essentially what he explained to me is that, they're concerned that because of this connection that's been made, because of the enhanced emotional state that he's in, and because he's fully aware of everything. He's got, according to him, he's got full memory recall of all of it. How we got here, how I got here, and how all this happened. And they're worried that this is going to be a problem in the future. Now, he did say something else, which is interesting. I've been a big skeptic of this. People talk about, the overall liberation of the entire planet at some point, a hot war between ET factions and, the militaries. And he told me, he said that, and I didn't expect to hear this, and this, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know. This could be them giving me this information, pretending to be my altar for all I know. I don't know, even though it felt real.
Isn't that annoying? God, it's such a mind fuck. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Go on.
And he said that we have already won. They've actually lost in the future, and they know it. And to not believe their lies because they're constantly trying to portray themselves as we got this completely locked up, and you just need to conform, and we can make your life better. And lately, it's been we can put you in Like it's always promises for the next
Someone
lifetime.
was saying to me, "Oh, all you had to do was obey, and your life would be so good, like mine." That's like exactly what they say. Is that like all you got to do obey, and things will be great. It's already fucked over anyway, so you might as well be able to be like on the top of the pyramid with all the fucking powerful people,
Right?
Kinda
Like
what
the
they
same
tell you.
offer. It's like, we could make your life a lot better. I'm like, well, what about this life? Oh, we'll do some stuff here too. I said, I'm not seeing anything in this life. You know, if you help me, you can make me walk better, because I got a herniated disc or partially herniated disc, and I've aggravated it, and I'm having trouble walking from it, and I've already had a fusion surgery. So it's like I can't afford to have another. So it would be nice if they would do something, you know, to help me if they want to use me, but it just doesn't seem like they're willing to do that either. They got rid of long COVID that they caused. That was about it. And then tried to tell me that they were going to make my life better. They wanted me to, you know, move out of the country. They got a whole plan and a whole itinerary for me to do, you know, to better utilize me. And all I have to do is just comply with it and shut my mouth in like less than 2 years. So it sounded like this. It sounded like my way out. And then, so I said, fine, let's do it. But show me something, you know, show me the proof of it. And, you know, I got better from COVID, but I'm kind of stuck in this position where nothing's really getting better right now. And I'm not, and they're using it as leverage. They use a spouse that was here. Because I was, what they told me is that I came here voluntarily, basically threw myself into the situation to get captured, which was bullshit. You know, my alters do what they're supposed to do to perfection, is what they told me. And they said, because they're waking up, there's a risk. And that's why they wanted to do some damage control with me and try to fix some things before I wound up homeless in a car, living out of a van or something with no health care and, you know, no CPAP machine to plug in, because I can't even breathe. With what they've done to me with sinus surgeries and making, you know, like a disease condition in my nose and my sinuses. I've had so many surgeries, I need a CPAP machine. You know, they wrecked my endocrine system. I need testosterone injections. I need a certain level of care to stay alive and maintain myself. And I need a roof over my head. I can't be living in a car like some people. And they've always brought me to the brink of that and pulled me back. You know, it's like they didn't want me to go completely over that edge, but they wanted to keep me in a state where I couldn't do anything. And what their reasoning was for Arkheim, it wasn't my alters were being insubordinate. It's that they looked through time and saw that what I would do personally, and as the higher, or not the higher self, but the original self in society. So they also told me too that I've had put me through many, many lifetimes and other time periods, like in Egypt, to see what I would do. So instead of like putting me in, you know, society as the original self, they put me in different timelines as the original self, or various parts of this timeline. So I would go back to Egypt 30 times, and, you know, and every time they had problems with me, you know, like stirring up shit, doing things. When I was a kid, 14, 15 years old, I started making explosives out of some homemade rocket kits that I bought a book on how to make sugar rockets. Then I started making rockets out of like sulfur, potassium nitrate, and charcoal. Then I added aluminum powder to that, took the charcoal out, started making flash powder. Then I started making firecrackers and floral shells. And then I started blowing up mailboxes because they were too loud. And the older people in the neighborhood, because I lived in a neighborhood, it was mostly retired at that point. It was near Westinghouse. So a lot of those people were older now, you know, and it was like a generational shift where all the teenagers in my neighborhood were living amongst elderly people. So God forbid you lit fireworks off, because they didn't like that. So they called the police, and I got together with some kids and said, let's blow some mailboxes up and leave nursery rhymes, taunting the police and the people that we blew the mailboxes up, you know, taunting them who were in the mailbox. Totally irresponsible. It got so bad, like the first time it happened, the mailbox blew off and hit a pickup truck across the street and stamped the side of the bed. On the side of the truck, it said US, and it had the exact shape of a mailbox. And when I saw it on the local news and they zoomed in on it and said they're using some very powerful explosives, it just like triggered me to like, let's do some more shit. So this got out of hand. It was like 7 or 8 mailboxes like this. And that was 26 felonies and a misdemeanor. They got me out of that with no criminal record as a juvenile. Then I got busted for weed in 1995, 41 plants, back when it was like a 25-year sentence, right? I wound up getting nothing on that and no criminal record. So they kept bailing me out of shit all the time. It was like constant rebellion against the government, constantly like pushing back. And what they told me multiple times, and it was in a session with Olivia James, they said it. She channeled one of my handlers, and that's how they connected with me where I had them. I knew them by first name. There's 3 of them. They work for SoftCell, which is contracted to Kruger or some shadow company that's like a proxy to Kruger or for Kruger. So there's no paper trail because Kruger, from what I understand, is on a different timeline, which my handlers referred to as the master timeline from their corporate perspective. So for them, where Kruger's headquartered at least from the Kruger perspective, this is the timeline we're working off of, and we're working with other timelines through proxy companies. So yeah, I mean,
Kruger mean timeline.
What's that?
Instead of Greenwich Mean Time, you have Kruger.
Yeah, Kruger time. You know, it's like it's real time. You know, but anyway, lost track where I was headed with this, but I'm trying to think here. But anyway, shifting gears a little bit, wherever I was going with that. I don't know if it's them fucking with me or it's late, but one of the things that happened to me as I was making contact with this altar is that I actually phased into a spacecraft. And I'm sitting in a room that's circular, and there's like 4 or 5 or 6 square windows to my left. The whole thing is seamless, and it had a weird white textured plastic look to it. There was a circular table, and then a table that I was a metal chair that I was sitting at. It was my own private break room, and I was in there by myself, and it wasn't that big. It's maybe 8 by 8 or something. It wasn't really that large, but it was like a little pod, almost like it kind of gave me the impression like it was like a little alcove on the edge of the spacecraft, just like a little observation room that you could look out the windows on. It was like a place to get away. And it was weird. I knew it wasn't in my imagination because I was there. I was half in this reality and half in that one. And I was studying it, and I could see that, you know, there was no seams, no fasteners, no lightings, no source of lighting. It was just there. The light was completely shadowless. And where the wall met the ceiling, it had a weird type of like a weird shape to it. It was almost like it was reinforcements where the two connected together. It was rounded, but it had thicker portions, and it was done in an ornate style to where it didn't look like shit. It just looked like it was all injection molded. And so then from there, it was like I got more information. And then what he said is he, you know, like I said earlier, he broke away from the mind control to the point where he could access everything and access me. And then here we are in this situation where they want to make deals, which, you know, I don't know if there's anything to it. There's any validity at all to it. But they put me in a situation where I couldn't make a living. I couldn't support myself, and I need healthcare. So it's to a point where I'm at bottom. It's as far down as they're going to push me before I'm homeless and have no options at all. And then they come along and make me feel better, get rid of the COVID, and then put all this in my lap. We want to reassign you. And this, what led up to this was a lot of threats. And finally, it just got to the point now where it's just like, you know, you've gotten over on this, Nathan. Your alters remember one another, most of them at least, and you're aware of everything that we're doing. And I started to, and I don't know if this is actually happening. He said it's a mind fuck. I'll give you another example of it. I'm listening them to the V2K, and then they'll stop saying something, and then I'll hear like almost like whispers in my mind of them saying something, and then they'll say it through the V2K like they were thinking about it. Sometimes I'll hear a second voice, or I'll hear the person second guessing themselves and then saying shit to me. And I don't know if they're trying to get me to believe that I'm hearing their thoughts unauthorized because they get pissed off when it happens, or I'm actually doing it and they're really upset about it and pissed off because, you know, the lady Erica that I talked to a few days ago on Rob's channel, she's in a position where she can remember, but she can also, I think she even said in the show that she can pick up their thoughts. So she's at a more advanced state than me as far as waking up is concerned, but we're in a similar position where they're trying to cut deals and be manipulative. And you know, like I said, I don't know if it's head games or what, but I get information internally, and I got interrogated for that. They wanted to know whether or not I was aware of how I was getting this information. I got hit earlier today with it too, because I had a communication with this altar, and he was just giving me advice about the turmoil in the community, and they wanted to know what we talked about. And I said, didn't you hear it? And then like, no, we don't hear what you're saying. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what you're saying, what we talked about, but they wanted to know, and they're putting pressure on me. And they claimed that they suspected me of getting either information that he was giving me that I wasn't allowed, that I shouldn't have. And I said, well, how can I hide that if later I think about it and then you hear me thinking about it and then I've already exposed it? He says, no, this will be subconsciously delivered to you. So, and then they admitted too that they think I'm getting information from other unhijacked aspects of myself, either in the future when we're not hijacked and we're not in this prison, probably from that, as well as other points in time and other timelines where they don't have control and I'm not hijacked. So that's where the information is coming from. So they've been interrogating me and trying to figure out where it's, where the origin of this and that is. And then of course I get threatened with retirement and a mind wipe and everything else. They threatened me. They said, if you keep this up and make yourself unusable for us, we're going to put you in a permanent state of retardation or physical handicap, lifetime after lifetime. And I said, what are you going to make me an abortion over and over again? They says, no, that's too much work. We're just going to put you in a terrible situation and make you suffer, and you'll never wake up. And you'll never be with your loved ones and the people that, like your spouse that we use as leveraged on you and so forth. So they hit me from all sides. And what really gets me, the worst part about it is, it's the homesickness, which doesn't have to do with where I came from. It has to do with the people, my immediate family, that I left. I didn't leave them, but when I got captured here, that's the part that hurts. I can't remember who they are, but I do know one person's here, but I can't remember. And it's just, and I spoke to Erica after we did the show on Rob's channel for at least a half hour or more. And she described it perfectly. And I don't remember her exact words, but it was how I would describe it more or less is that it's an emotion without a cognitive memory attached. You miss these people, but you don't remember who they are, but it hurts so bad. And she goes, I try to block that out. And I said, I've used that to help wake myself up, because that was the only part of me, or only part of that whole part of me that they took away that I could still tap into. And I used that pain to wake me up. I used it to break through enough of it because I wanted to remember who they were. I didn't want to be under their control anymore. It's wrong to take away somebody's loved ones like that.
It is.
Absolutely. So, yeah, but that's what I've had to do. I've had to fight them at that level, at the very basics. And I don't get the memories like you do, Arkheim, because they never intended for me to wake up. They wanted me to wake up. They knew I was going to wake up, but they wanted me to be into a delusion, a series of spiritual deceptions, whether it be the occult, whether it be religion. They actually tried various things when I was growing up. They got me convinced, that I needed to be a fundamentalist Christian for a while when I was growing up. It was like late teens, early, 20s. Yet I was still having these experiences. And so I couldn't fit into a regular church. I'd have to go with something fundamentalist, something that has some magic to it. Jesus is coming back, it's the end times. It taps into that feeling that I've got to fight against something. But it had nothing to do with fighting against the devil and this whole Christian scenario of the end times. It has something to do with the fact that I'm here to fight them and fight to get myself out of this. When I was a kid, standing at a sink, brushing my teeth, there's points in time that I remember and I would have these epiphanies. And this was one of them. And I remember brushing my teeth, and I must have been 8 or 9. And I just remember, and I thought about that story in, Revelations that I heard about, because I looked in the Bible. I had a Bible in the house, but I never really went to church when I was a kid a couple times. And I just remember reading this word salad in the back, and I think I watched some stuff on, TV about it. And the epiphany hit me that I've got to fight against this. And of course, when they started, the contact started, which was like, it was passive one way, and up until my late 20s, early 30s is when it really started to get going. So I'd say around 27 or 28 is when I had that experience with the singular that I talked about, where I had that reaction and then telepathic stuff. But it wasn't a few years later that I was getting two-way V2K contact with other technologies that they were using to give me a kind of a full simulated demonic ET experience. So yeah, they wanted me to be completely immersed in that shit and never wake up to who I was. And I think what they do, like with you, for example, and a lot of other people that have a lot of these elaborate memories, is that you know, they know you're going to wake up. So depending on your personality and how they can manipulate you, since we're all profiled, they know us better than we know ourselves. You maybe it's more advantageous for them if you remember more than somebody like me. It'd be better if I was just in a delusion versus, you know, your situation. They made that quite clear to me. And then, you know, why they did it.
Why do you think that they would allow me to remember this stuff?
Because I think it's just, you know, they can use it to handle you in some way. I don't know the reason for it, but it's just, it has to do with your personality. Now, not everything that you remember isn't necessarily something they wanted you to remember. You're fighting it at the same time. But I do see a pattern with people that they'll start getting hit with a lot of painful memories from the program handlers will make you remember and put you into a state of trauma and recovery where it's like I got a gnat in here, where it's like a repetitive loop. You just keep dealing with it and dealing with it and dealing with it, and it drags you down and it takes your quality of life away, and they can use it as a weapon. There's just a lot of ways that they can get to you. It's a mind fuck and an emotional mind fuck at that. I mean, they can hit you from so many different ways, and you just have to look at it from every point of view that you can.
You gotta also not give them ultimate. I don't look at them having ultimate control. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fighting to be in control all the time.
No, they don't have it.
You know, so it's very important to not talk about it in fatalistic terms either, though. And that's one thing I have no tolerance. Like, I'm not going to let them. I think a lot of what they say is bluffing. There's so much subterfuge in everything that's said and done. And like you said, it's expert psychological manipulation. So, you know, I think it's very important to not be too fatalistic about it and to believe like you really are being able to. It's not just what they let you to do. I mean, you have to listen to them all the time with the V2K shit. But, you know, I think a lot of that just comes down to a program in itself. They understand that's what you can focus on. And in any case, you know, we're not powerless, is what I want to say.
Maybe we ought to start wearing those Hershey Kiss hats with the EMF blocker. Just put have one looks like a Hershey Kiss, and we sit here like it just, you know, so we can have an unmolested podcast.
No, my sister's designing things like that. Yeah,
because I must have had a half a dozen podcast. I did.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's people need to realize, and it's just in general, like everybody should realize that, like, if you're not wearing, Penny's huge on this. If you're not wearing like a Faraday hat or like protection, and you're channeling, like you can just be channeling, like it can just be V2K, it can just be voice to skull,
right?
CIA, like channeling. So, and yeah, I feel like most people who are channeling in this community aren't wearing like a thing, but it doesn't mean that every single message that every person gets not wearing one is wrong, but it just leaves that possibility open, which makes the information possibly not true. So it's just an extra precaution people could take to ensure.
Well, and you have to study the effects of the information. That's what's always more important. It's not if it's true. What's the effect of this information? What's the implication of it, right?
Yeah, so like for me,
a lot of it is like, sit back, relax, don't do anything. That's like one school of thought, right?
Right.
Everybody's coming to do it for you. Exactly. So there's all these different ways to teach you how to be conditioned into this information. I think with a lot of this stuff that's coming out now, I think we're really in the process of watching them craft the next religion. You know, it's always been about belief systems, and they want nothing more than to turn it back into a religion where it becomes about beliefs and then controlling beliefs and so forth. And we just have to look at the effects. And so instead of worrying like, is this true? Is that true? It's just like, again, take multiple perspectives and say, you know what? I can look at all these objects on the shelf and they're just objects on the shelf. And I don't need to say which one's my favorite, like I'm a 5-year-old. You know, I can just say those are objects on the shelf. And that's how we have to start regarding information and looking at it like, how is this changing my life? How is this changing how I live and interact with other people? Is it helping me develop as an individual and a being? Or is it just like, I don't know, an endless rabbit hole to preoccupy and take over my life? Like, it can be any one of these things. It's what we do.
I think a lot of the information being presented, that whether it's the savior programming, worship programming, you know, like let's go back to something that has been talked about on the show for a long time. Corey Good, right? He was trying to be like, hey, only listen to me, like, and present this like Jesus Messiah figure and like this nice cushy, just sit back and enjoy the show, like you're saying, Dan, kind of message, to where like you don't have to do anything, like it's all taken care of. Now another person that's doing that right now is Elena Danan.
Oh God, you just said it, man. The trolls are coming. I was just thinking of her when you first brought this up.
Yeah. So I don't mean to like talk bad about her. I don't really know her.
We love her to death. She's great.
That's not true. Like, it's not over yet. Like, the war's barely just getting started, dude. Like, this is just the beginning.
Well, the other part is to also realize too, like this beginning. I mean, this thing's ancient.
Yeah.
This is more ancient than anyone can possibly conceive.
It's an ancient game.
It's never stopped. The war in heaven is the whole thing with the MILABs and everything else. What do you think they were talking about? Like, this stuff just never has stopped. We're just coming into the realization that
like,
is a war.
I'm an angel, for real. I'll say it. I'm an archangel. That's what I am. Like,
that's an interesting discussion. We ought to talk about that too, because the skeptics use that as cannon fodder. But in the programs, that's a real thing. You know, it isn't just like we're stroking each other's ego. It's not. I mean, it's like the Sith and the it's like Star Wars. You know, you have the two sides of the Force, and you have the ones that spend the time. Of course, there's also an angelic kind of like a genetic factor here as well, from what I understand. But I mean, so it's kind of a caste system in a sense, from what I understand. Was that something that you would agree with, Arkheim?
Yeah.
That's the way I was.
Well, it's hard for me to explain, but basically, like, it's been turned into a mythology when the reality is angel just, I guess, more or less means messenger. His implications of coming from the sky, coming from the stars, and all it really means is like ET that like came here and ended up getting stuck here and weren't able to leave during the Great Deluge and the Great War. They got stuck here. That's, to me, that's my story anyway. Is like, that's literally, I was an ET. I was on a ship. I mean, it's way more complicated than that. I wasn't just some random ET. I was doing a lot of stuff. I was pretty important. Yeah. That's a whole.
Well, there's a very fractal nature to it as well, right? Like, these traumas from history repeat, and then so like it's sort of strange. The same types of battles have happened in the far past and the not as far past, and they've taken place over different parts of the galaxy, and they continue. It's like it's unconscious drive almost. It just keeps reproducing itself and remanifesting itself, these very ancient conflicts, you know. So that's why it's always a problem when people look for an origin, because there really isn't an origin. It's just sort of like a fractal. The second you've sort of zoomed into it, it's already sort of zooming out, and the part that was zoomed out is already zooming in. It's always in this process of movement, right?
Well, hey guys, this is an amazing show, but I gotta be real with you guys. My attention span is lessening, and
I was getting really tired there earlier too.
Yeah, I'm tired.
I did a long day of work and I've been sick.
And I don't think I can go on for much longer.
No,
but I do think we should do this again.
You're on the other coast too. It's 1 a.m. here, 12:54.
Yeah. So it's even later for you. So you're a real trooper. I'm the one bringing it up over here. But yeah, I just kind of want to be able to say good night to Kat before she goes to bed and stuff. And
for sure. I didn't even have dinner yet, so.
Yeah. But Dan, I think that I'd love to have you on the show as a solo guest.
Sure.
sometime in the future to talk about the Mormon thing.
Yeah, it's a subject. It's a subject that deserves a lot of attention, and it's interesting.
We can do a whole
dig
show on
into.
that.
Yeah.
And then Nathan, you as well. I mean, like, I've been on shows with you now, and even this time I tried to get you on solo, but you're like, no, let's bring on someone else. So one of these times I need to get you on here solo, Nathan, for sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. Hey, before we completely go off air, actually, if you can hold the stream open, but shut everybody out who's watching, and I just want to talk to you real quick. You know, have an issue I want to talk to you about.
All right. Well, yeah, we can talk privately. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just for a couple minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, hey, I appreciate everybody watching this.
Thank you.
Dan, where can we find you at? Your name is Dan Armstrong, by the way. You just
Yeah,
on the screen.
I'm on Facebook, and there's the email. I've been meaning to set up a website forever. I still haven't set up my channel properly. I just keep doing interviews, and eventually I'll just compile all these interviews to make my channel eventually. So just contact me. You can probably easiest is just Stanton Mick, STANTONMICK @hotmail. If you just want to reach out and just talk about whatever, that's cool. And I'll hopefully have more formal means in the future.
Okay, so yeah, I'll definitely need to get a hold of you. Can you put that on the screen real quick?
Sure. Let me see.
Yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. We've got just for the future for what you guys I have Ida Fairhart talking about her super soldier testimony, which is kind of new to her, and she's pretty big in this community. She was a huge part of the Full Disclosure Now conference, so that's kind of exciting. And then I got a show on Thursday with Delandra Markman, and we're talking about time loops and alternate timelines, and that's also going to be a really good show. He's the one who I did my presentation with at the Full Disclosure Now conference. So anyway, where's your email at? Where are you able to put it?
I'm sorry. I'm supposed to put it in the comments. Here, let me put it.
Yeah, and then I can put it on the screen.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll put some shit over there, too.
Yeah. I'm just plugging you guys before I get going here.
Yeah, 1 second here.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Make you click enough things. Oh my God, what am I doing now? 1 second.
Yeah, we definitely gotta do another show with Dan for sure. Yeah, you're great, Dan. I was really nice meeting you this way, and thanks for introducing us, Nathan.
Yeah, you'll like Dan. He's got a lot to talk about. His
Yeah,
Mormons.
for sure. Thank you.
Not the first time I've met you.
That's the point of doing this. So many people that we haven't met.
Oh, for sure.
You know, we all need to kind of get on the same page and stop the nonsense and the infighting and thinking we're all out to get one another.
Were you able to post your email or not?
Yeah, I got my email
No,
up there.
I wasn't. But
Where's yours? I don't see it. I think the comments are lagging hardcore or something.
Well, it could be. We always have friends from the agencies that like to come in and help out with their tech support. So,
yeah, that's true.
well,
it's in the comments in the chat probably anyway. So people.
Yeah, I'll add it after. Let me see. Oh, I think I'm finally allowed to.
You can find me at the Hot J and Contact D channel or Planetary Consciousness Project Telegram or Rob's Telegram. I'm popping in there. I'm an administrator there. It's not there that often though. I should be there more.
All right, perfect. Well,
all right.
I'm going to end the show now. Thanks